ladies and gentlemen, the Tiny DevOps Guy.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Tiny DevOps Podcast, where we talk about DevOps and all related topics for tiny companies. I'm your host, Jonathan Hall. Today, I have a special guest. I think, Adrian, you're the first podcast listener I've had on the show as a guest. So congratulations, I guess.
Thank you very much.
I don't have a trophy, but it's nice to have that. So Adrian's been listening to the show. I don't know how long, but we got in contact several weeks ago. He told me he found me through the podcast. We had a nice conversation, and we've since connected on LinkedIn. And he responded to one of my my daily emails about agile transformations, I think. And I think I made the point that if you want to do an agile transformation, the best way is to do something today to make your team more agile, and then do that again every day forever. and he responded to me and said that he felt that resonated with him, and he had some experiences he wanted to share about when that did and maybe didn't work. But before we get into that, Adrian, why don't you talk to us a little bit about who you are, what your experience is with DevOps, and then we'll get into the topic. So let us know a little bit about yourself first.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, thanks to have a chance to be here. So I'm Adrian, as said before, and we are a system integrator based in Germany, a small company, and I'm one of the founders. And we do integrations for web-to-print systems for customers, mostly in Germany, but for companies like franchise companies Europe-wide as well. And we do it for nearly two decades now. And we had a problem with, that it worked pretty well the last 10 years. But I think since 2 or 3 years, we have bigger problems with all our monolithic systems we just developed over so many years now. And the biggest problems we faced is we actually weren't able to get any features out anymore. So the time to market was really bad. And we lost completely the overview of our systems. And for a small company like we are, it's quite a huge problem if you stop to develop your team and your workflows to get better in what you do. So you mentioned DevOps. For example, this is something we haven't implemented at all, if you like so. So we weren't aware of it. Of course, we used some of those techniques, but we weren't aware of that DevOps is a topic for itself. So if you are not aware of that, you cannot develop on that. And without those things, we weren't able to really think about, for example, CI/CD. We just were used to use SVN, for example, for many years now. And we just used deployment scripts to get our stuff to the customer. We had no tests in place. So actually, you are the person who pushed me towards test-driven development. I haven't really utilized it beforehand, and my colleagues didn't do it either. And so the problem we had actually was that every time we go for a new feature, wanted to deploy it, and then something else broke in the system somewhere. Even maybe not in the system we actually deployed it. So we have multi-tenant systems. Like we deployed it on one customer, and the submodules we used to implement, broke in another system, and we had no overview about that. And actually, our clients became QR testers for us, and they found those bugs. And this is a problem, or actually is a big problem for a small company. So I think the reason why we stayed small is that we work that way. And since 2 or 3 years, we try to work on that pretty heavily. So we went away from systems or let's say programming languages like PHP and moved to more modern languages because we think this is the future. Or this is the future for small companies in particular. I can talk about this a little later, why we do that. But overall, we try to rethink everything we do. So DevOps is a foundation. We really live that. So we understood that DevOps is not a type of engineering position in a company. So it's more a cultural mindset. And it took a time that every of our developers we have really get to the point what DevOps really is or what it meant to be or why it's important to think in that way. Operations wasn't a thing at all beforehand. We just had some IIS service where our stuff was deployed. We just pushed it on there and it was running. So operations was never a thing. We had a sysadmin and that's all. But now operations is a part of the development process, part of the development cycle. This is pretty important to be able to deliver a quality product. So we think in quality. It sounds weird to a company for 20 years not working with quality products, but it's all come down to mindset problem. And we have some new applications we made since then with new technologies, with DevOps in mind, with good CI/CD in place, even with TDD. We started to utilize it now. And this is something, or we think we created a foundation now where we can basically work on in the future as well. So we are future proof with that. The thing is, or what we want to talk about today is we have a lot of legacy stuff, and this legacy or those legacy deployments are a problem for a small company to get away with. Or to try to get them to the next level, or substitute them by a new system is always a matter of costs and effort. And you really need to find a way as a small company to get to this point. And yes, we have a foundation now. We have the mindset, we have the culture to do this. But yeah, we're still standing in front of a wall of work, wall of effort. And I consulted the client some weeks beforehand, and the topic was to get this mindset to his team as well. To show them what's on the market, what can you do with modern technologies and modern ways to work, like DevOps or Agile or CI/CD, and all those buzzwords. What are the meaning of those? And he told me to please think in baby steps, because baby steps are something which a small company can work with. It's like my problem in the past was I was thinking about too large steps. We were a small company and tried to get a new system, just to find a substitute for our old system. And this client basically gave me the idea how we can work on our problem. So this was actually the start of our endeavor to get from our monolithic system to a more service-orientated system, and add some additional services like microservices, micro-frontends to the old system to get away from this sluggish state of stagnation up to something where we can deliver again. All the new little services we create now are already on the new foundation. They're completely orchestrated. They are well tested. Everything is in continuous deployment, and it's all in a foundation. What we try to accomplish with this approach is to get rid of the old system step by step. So, for example, we kept the old front end and used micro-frontend techniques to actually put in new front ends made with React, for example, with Next.js, and just displayed it into the old version, just to have new capabilities in place, just to can basically accomplish what the product team is requiring from us. And what the goal with this, for example, with the front-end part is to actually build as many micro front-ends as possible up to the day where we only have one front-end left. Those are the baby steps there. So we try to get one little part of the front end updated, in a newer version, while still keeping the old one. And on some point, we actually have enough parts. We can just assemble that to a new front end, and we can, just shut down the old one and use the new one. And the newer parts are all connected by a general purpose API with new services we made. And we actually translate the old monolithic API into a newer API where those new front ends can communicate with the old parts and the new parts at the same time. So on the backend part, we do the same thing with baby steps. We erase, or no, not erasing, but substituting a service by service. But we try to keep in mind that we don't want to make this is maybe a misunderstanding because lately we have a lot of conversations about what microservices are, microservices versus monolithic. So I don't want to get too much into detail with that, but we try to stay with three actually domains or domain boundaries. Yeah, we have the inspiration part, which are product details. This is a shop system, by the way. We have basically a part where the product details are, where you get some advertisement. You just get an appetizer to buy the current product. Then we have the shop part itself, like the shopping cart and the payment stuff. And we have a fulfillment domain where actually this is not really a part of the shop itself. It's what's happened after the shop. So we have a web to print system. There needs to be some those products need to be created as, for example, PDF files and sent to a print house, for example. So those are the three domains we think in. And we have actually services for all those three domains, but we don't want to overextend it to have, for example, like hundreds of microservices in place. This is not our goal. So actually, sometimes we think about if what we do is really a microservice, or what we create is really microservices, because our microservices are quite huge. Maybe there are more services, but the idea is the same. They are isolated and at work, but they have, we are a small team. We cannot afford to have too many of them at the same time. But
right.
But the idea is the same. You have separation of concerns. You try to decouple everything and be able to, or actually, we never want to get back into this stagnation state of having a application where we cannot, plan and do anything anymore, or have the fear that something break if you deploy it. This is what our goal is. So we do this pattern with every application we have currently, and it works out quite well for a small team. So many want us to not do this with a small team. Just go with another solution, just build it somewhere else.
Specifically to not do microservices, or to not do the piece by piece replacement,
and not to go to microservices, for example.
Okay.
This is a thing where many, we often heard about, the warnings, not use microservices in small teams. Just you need 50 developers for at least one service and stuff. I think it's just not really right at this point. You can use microservices, but you need to be very specific with your domains, with your boundaries, with your context, and you need to plan before you start to develop those. But once they are in place, for example, we use Docker Swarm as an orchestrator. We are not in the cloud with it at the moment, so we plan to do this. This is one of our next steps. We still use it on our local server, not local service, but it's a data center, and we try to accomplish that operations is not overwhelming us. So this was one of our goals. So we said operations is something we need to do within our team, but it should not be a complete position. So let's say we don't need a specific dedicated person who's doing operations all day long. We are just a too small company for that. And with that in mind, we decided to go with Docker Swarm, and actually we composed an application which is together with continuous deployment. It was possible to just have no big interference between those services. So you just made an update and basically everything works out. So I never understood where this big problem with microservice really were. So I think it's when you think about or plan beforehand, you will not have too many problems with microservices. So I just want to point it out at this time.
Nice.
Okay.
So I'm curious to hear a little bit more about how you came to the idea. You described the way you sort of have a view into the old application and you're piece by piece replacing that with a new one. It reminds me, I don't know if you're familiar with the term, but it reminds me of the Strangler Fig pattern that I think it was Martin Fowler who first used the term, but it's caught on since then. And the idea, I don't know if you've heard of the Strangler Fig Tree. Of course, I didn't know about it until I read his description of it. But it's this tree that starts to encompass another tree. And over time, it grows around it and eventually kills the other tree around it, completely kills it. And it's sort of I don't know if it's actually a parasite, but it certainly envelops and kills this other tree. And he liked to use this as a metaphor for application replacement rather than build a whole new application and then do this big bang switch where you throw the old one away and start the new one. You just do a little bit at a time, replace the old application with a new one in place, and then eventually the old application is gone. It sounds like that's kind of what you're describing. Would you agree?
I definitely agree, but I have to say I heard of this term, but I never got deeper into this one. But yes, it is actually what we try to accomplish. So going in baby steps. This is what our term is. Going in baby steps to migrate into some new architecture, and until the point where everything is migrated and we can shut down everything else. But on the way, it's not like a big switch on a single day. It just means that if you are done with substituting one part, the old part is gone and the new part is online. So this is the reason why we use those macro architectures where you have many small parts, and you just need to orchestrate those small parts, develop on those small parts, and on some point you get to a new solution. This is what our goal is in the end.
Let's talk a little bit more in detail about the technology of your old solution that you're replacing. I know you mentioned PHP. Maybe you want to go into a little detail. What does that old system look like that you're trying to replace?
Oh, it's a bad one. It's a real bad one. We use PageFlex. PageFlex is not the bad part of it. It's a rendering engine we used to use for many years, and it brings a storefront with it. It's a ASP.NET application. You need to install it on Windows Service and stuff like that. And we used this solution for many customers and for ourselves in the past. And on some point, we just figured out that it's not possible to fulfill any requirements with this software we had to this time from our clients. So we needed to invent something on top of this of the system to fulfill the demands. And we actually created something with PHP, put it on top of this application into the IIS server as well. So we ran actually C# and PHP at the same time on a web server. I think this is one of the web servers, IIS who can handle this, but it was never a great solution. It was maybe a good idea to that time, but with the view of today, it was an awful decision of myself maybe. But this is actually what we do. We work in PHP. to avoid changes in the underlying system, which is made in C sharp. So we have basically a core which we can just update when the new update is out, and we just build our framework on top of that. But this framework is discontinued, so we do not develop on this framework for some years now. It's just we use it we maintain it as a legacy framework. So everything we do now is made in Next.js React in front end and Nest.js in the backend terms. So we are basically a TypeScript company, if you like.
Okay. So I'm interested to understand the timeline. When did you decide that it was time to replace the old application? How long ago did that happen?
Actually, we thought about 3 or 4 years now that we should do something, because we had several issues with security. We had problems with our front end. We still use prototype.js. Maybe someone is aware of that very old framework. It's actually the framework before jQuery, and
okay.
This is a real legacy framework, but we need to get rid of those frameworks because we were a little afraid of those browser changes. What actually Chromium browsers did, or they restricted some parts of that, and we needed to figure out ways to keep those old frameworks compatible with modern browsers and stuff like that. And this was the point where we said, okay, we need to do something. And on the backend side, there were similar problems, like we weren't able to do updates anymore on the core system. We're PageFlex, as we said before, and there came new Windows Server versions out, new PHP versions, and PHP wasn't available. PHP 8, for example, wasn't available for Windows at that time, and I don't know if it's today. So all those led to the decision we should make something. But in 2020, we had actually a security incident where we actually, we got hacked. And this was we rolled back everything, and everything was fine afterwards. Again, after some weeks, we were back on track. But this was the point where we said, no, we need to go away from this. But then we thought about maybe 6 months how to get to the point where we have a new application and the old stuff is gone. And this was basically the big problem I talked in the very beginning of the show. It's the effort. It's small team with between 4 to 5 developers. How do you migrate something which you worked for years on it to create it? It's not just get some funding and do it on next to another application. It's not possible. And the clients accept or expect at this point that they pay for services, and they expect those services run, and they don't want to pay the second time to get those services running securely and well and performant. And performance was another reason. So we did everything we can to get some performance out of our old system. It was very, very slow. Like the web vitals were in a deep red area, and we used systems like Nginx with caching, like Nginx Plus system, to get some caching onto our system, and it works out, but it wasn't great. It was okay then, but it wasn't great. So everything we tried to do was actually not satisfying for the clients, not satisfying for the developers. We had some kind of developer fatigue. It was like a developer always want to have some kind of perspective in his life, and if he starts to work for too long on a legacy system, which is a unique system no one else on the world wants to have anymore, so it's nothing worth to stay for a developer into the company. So it doesn't matter in which direction you took a look. we needed to get away from that state we were in. And this was maybe the answer for your question, I think.
Yeah. So, but before, so you started doing the new version of the application, it sounds like in 2020. So
yeah,
a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, something like that. What percentage have you completed? What percentage is now the re-implementation versus the old?
Okay. I would say in 2 or 3 months, we should be done with the complete front-end part.
Okay.
Then we will decide if we go straight to the backend side and say, okay, now we focus on the backend side to get it up and running into a new architecture as well. But we are still not sure if we should implement more SaaS applications into our system or build everything on our own. So while we developed the backend side, we thought about implementing stuff like Odoo or other services who are actually just ready to go instead of creating everything for our own. So the make or buy decisions were made, or actually we are considering what we do there. And we want to finalize the decision when we are done with the front end part. This is the thing. So the idea of our API is that our API is translating definitely what our legacy system is doing. So it's basically no matter what comes in the future, this API will translate other services like SaaS services as well. So we are, I think, good to go and future-proof with that pattern for a small company there.
That's really good. That's an encouraging story. It sounds like you were in a I don't want to say disaster because you were serving clients and you were meeting business needs, but it was difficult 2 years ago, and maybe the security incident counts as a disaster. And now it sounds like you're 3 months away from being in a much better place. I'm curious if you can put some numbers on that. Like before the security incident, you mentioned the time to market was slow. How long would it take you to get a feature change or even a bug fix from conception into production? How long did that take before, and what does it look like now?
My partner always complained that the IT is not delivering fast enough. For example, we had a feature where we shall connect to a service of a real estate service supplier, and we supposed that this would be an overall effort for about 3 weeks, and it took 18 months to accomplish. The problem was it was not. The thing is, it is not the fault of a single application. The problem is we are a small team and we need to work on many applications with many problems. And you jump from one problem to another, and everything it's just not working out everywhere. And when you are in such it's a downward spiral. And you will never get to the point that you've just finished one single feature. It's just not possible. And this feature I mentioned isn't really ready today. It still have issues and it's had bugs and it's not working 100%. But we are on the way to finish that one. But soon we need to replace it by the new version anyway, so we can throw it away. Then it took us a long time to do this, and same happened to other features as well. So many features we just never put it out of the backlog, so it never get onto any sprint. We haven't thought in sprints anyway, so we tried often to implement the thinking of sprints. Say we do this week, and the next week we doing this, but it wasn't working. We had so many problems built into our system, into our culture, into our workflows that actually nothing was possible anymore. Our performance was near to zero. So we tried to some client projects where we knew, okay, we can finish them. We focused on those things, but the really important stuff, which would bring us to some point where we actually were we able to grow. We were never able to get to this point or fulfill or actually accomplish those tasks. It's just what wasn't possible. Yeah.
Before you started the new service rewrite, how long did it take you to deploy a change? Suppose you just wanted to fix a typo somewhere, something really simple, so it didn't take a lot of development effort, but you got it done. How long would it take to deploy?
Several days, I would say, because the problem was that we used some kind of submodules between SVN submodules between those systems, and since we had no test-driven development in place, we had no tests overall in place. We had basically none, and we had staging systems. So basically, every developer tested by himself, if we were lucky, on the staging system. And maybe they, by checking the application, the whole application, maybe they found an error or not. And from this point, the problem was that no one was sure about what they deploy there. So the reason for those delays were not the technical part. It was just we were not sure if we were able to deploy those changes. So we waited for somebody else to take a look. And test the upcoming features, but it took time and if you do this many times in parallel, the problem is that you create a pile of unfinished stuff, and when you have this pile, for example, you have 5 changes, and no one is really sure about what happens when you deploy those 5 changes. Then you tend to not do this.
And how long does it take today to do a deployment? If you have a small typo fix, how long does it take?
Actually, we push it, and it's some minutes later on the system.
That's a huge improvement, then, isn't it?
But I have to admit, it's really only the very new services we created. Very new front ends we create. It is just a very small part of our main system. So the most of the stuff is still in a problematic state. We have not implemented TDD in any way for our old system. We have to admit that this is still a problem. So
that's understandable and expected. I mean, it's incredibly difficult. It's not impossible, but it's a big effort to start doing TDD on a project that doesn't already have nearly complete test coverage, because your code is generally not testable, right?
Yeah.
You have code, and the way I learned TDD was by writing. I learned it for bug fixing before I learned it for writing new features. So I would discover a bug, and I would try to write a test to prove that the bug existed, and then I would try to fix the bug. And that's really hard on a system that doesn't have tests, because you end up writing end-to-end tests to prove that your bug exists, because you don't have the granularity. Your code isn't modular enough to write those tests. So you're forgiven, in my opinion, for not retrofitting your old code with tests like that, because it's a huge effort, and it's also dangerous because you don't have tests yet on that code. Modifying it to be testable is likely and almost certain to add bugs that you don't detect with your tests. Yeah. So I don't blame you for not doing that.
Actually, I forgot we have some end-to-end tests in place, but this is more like a log into that system and check if some on the main homepage or the initial page is where you can make some kind of assert for a ID for a HTML element, and that's all. This is all we test. But those tests basically never fail. So we could shut them down, but we have no effect on our deployment at all. Yeah.
Well, I'm encouraged to hear the progress you've made. I hope it's a good story. I mean, I think you come from a situation that's so typical. I mean, it's everything you were describing about the chaos of the old system. I have lived through that before on old systems. So I completely identify with what you're saying. I imagine many, many listeners are in the same situation, or at least have been in the past. So it's really encouraging for me to hear that over the course of roughly 2 years, you've been able to make significant progress in improving your system with baby steps. And that's really the only way you can do it. Because if you try to do it all at once, I don't care if you're talking about doing a full rewrite all at once or adopting all agile practices, whatever that would even mean, all at once. You can't do it. It's impossible. It's overwhelming. So it's emotionally and mentally impossible, and it's just probably physically impossible. So I really appreciate your story, and I sympathize with the pain you've been going through.
Pain is good. Yeah. No, pain is not good, but pain is a good word for it. So actually, we had a lot of pain points, and there were months which were just horrible times, and I only can recommend to not fall into the trap of not think about the fundamentals like DevOps, like TDD, like CI/CD. You need to have those, especially continuous deployment. You really need to have that in place before anything else. So you can, don't be too cautious with your deployment, because what we found out is the more, the slower we go, the more cautious we go, the more problems we have in the end. It's this is just a thing of maturity. This is how mature are you working on your systems? This is what we found out, what we took away from our learning. And when we met you, or when I met you, this is you just gave us the last last kick to really go into the direction. So I have to thank you for that. It was
I'm glad I could be of help.
It was a good meeting we had some weeks or maybe a month ago. I don't know. It was a time ago now, but it really helped us to make those last important steps to really round up everything.
That's good. Do you have the ability still to do your own manual testing? Do you have staging environments for the new system as well, or are you relying only on automated testing?
We don't have a staging system anymore for the newer systems. Okay. We have some kind of development version of it, but it's not meant to be shown to the customer or client or someone else anymore. It's just for development purposes. For example, to have some extended testing with several services together. For this, it's okay. So, but it's not meant to be the traditional staging system anymore, where everything is parked until someone is testing it. So it doesn't do this anymore.
But it sounds like your developers do have the ability to test their code in a live sort of scenario before they deploy it if they want to.
Yeah, with real data.
Yeah, that's great. That's really good. That's one of the things that I always encourage, especially small teams, to do who aren't doing continuous deployment yet, is to set up an environment exactly as you've described, so that they can do this testing before they hit that merge button in GitHub or whichever tool they're using, and that allows you to then automate from the time you hit merge. You can automate the deployment from there, which it sounds like you're already doing, which is just amazing. You can still do, and the pushback I usually get is teams that are accustomed to pushing to staging, and then a QA team or a QA person, or maybe it's a developer, but there's a manual QA process, and then they remerge into to production or something like that. These teams are usually using GitFlow or something like that. And we haven't talked about your branching strategy. I don't know if you're using GitFlow or not. But what I usually encourage these teams to do is just push that manual testing stage before they hit the merge button. And then everything from merge forward is automated. And I call it lean CD. That's not really a good term because it's not from the lean manufacturing. It's more the lean startup idea of a minimum viable CD sort of thing. but this is the approach I like to do. I've done it at several companies, I don't know if you think you're doing the same thing. It doesn't really matter. The point is, I agree with you with what you're saying, that continuous delivery and deployment is so important, and you can't allow yourself to be driven by fear. What you're describing to me sounds like the old advice to optimize for your mean time to recovery, MTTR, rather than your mean time between failure, or MTBF. And fear causes us to optimize for the time between failure. Basically, we do everything we can to make sure nothing ever fails, but we can't do it. Humans always fail, and and even when humans don't fail, the technology fails. A hard drive crashes or something else goes wrong. Amazon goes down for a day, whatever. Things will fail. So if we try to optimize for mean time between failure, in other words, we try to prevent failures from occurring, we will never succeed. But if we optimize instead for fast recovery, then we're prepared when these inevitable failures do occur. And so, and you understand this difference in mindset, which is so important, that being afraid to deploy something is the enemy of responding quickly when something fails. And so I'm really encouraged to hear you say this. I hope that every listener listening today, if you're afraid of deploying because you think things will break, I understand. It's natural, but we need to find a way for you to not be afraid to deploy, and instead rely on the fact that you can fix a failure quickly when it happens.
This is a good point. And I think before, when you have never done it before, you will never realize it. So, it's something you cannot do a theory about this, or and say, okay, I have understand this and everything is good now. So you just need to have confidence after you integrated that, and you will have it. Actually, in my opinion, you will have it. We, for example, we use Docker Swarm, so no Kubernetes for a small team like us, but we can just switch between the image versions by a click. So if something happens, after an automatic continuous deployment process, we just roll back and all is fine. We don't even need to push it. We just can go into the orchestrator and say, just roll it back, and all is good again. Hopefully, sometimes it's not, but if you have all this in mind while you're developing your stuff, then you will not develop software which is likely to fail that easy. You will think different. If you stop thinking in month of development for a single update, then you will have a different mindset while developing features. Features become pretty small then. A single feature can be just another color of a button.
Yes.
It is not like a complete system update where everything changes. No one knows what happens. It's just the smallest tiny bit you can define is what you actually should, try to get to this point.
Exactly.
And this is the point where a developer is able to determine if his code or actually his feature is tested or not, or it's actually fit the requirement or not. Because the briefing for a single piece is small. You just have maybe one or two sentences. It shouldn't be more. So everyone can say, okay, this is now fitting the requirement. But if you need a small book before you make a feature, then you can't test it. You need a QA person for this. But as a small company, we don't want to afford it. Dedicated QA person. So this is the best way we can, or the best we could have done to get to this point. Yeah.
Great. I've enjoyed this conversation a lot. Adrian, do you have any recommendations if anybody's going through the same sort of struggle that you were in the past? Do you have recommended reading or a favorite conference talk or anything that you could recommend for people who want to learn more about how to get into this mindset that you went through?
There are books. Maybe you can link those in the show notes about micro-frontends.
Okay.
I think micro-frontends will open your eyes. microservices are good as well, but micro frontends are, more like a visual thing you can understand to know what happens then. So this is about the architecture. And to be honest, I just read a lot of blogs. I just listen to many podcasts. This is what I do to get to the point. And your podcast, for example, is a good thing for getting into development operations and agile thinking and stuff like that. This is very important. But I think it's not, or at least in my opinion, it's not about one book or one thing and suddenly you understand everything. You need to believe that you can do it first and then try to get better every day. You always should think, what can you do today? What makes you better than you was tomorrow? And when you have this mindset, everything else comes by itself. This is my opinion. Have a goal and then work towards this.
Adrian, if people are interested in reaching out to you, are you available for contact on social media or anywhere else?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn or just go to my name, Adrian Stanek, .dev, and you will find my blog there, so you can contact me there if you like.
Wonderful. And tell us the name of your business also. I know we talked all about it. I don't know if you told us the name at the beginning. Oh. If anybody's interested in web to print, if they would like your services, how can they find your business?
It's bitsinmotion.de. Like the bits in motion. Yeah, it's just one word, .de. We haven't a very big web presence, I have to admit. So don't wonder. It's completely okay. But we are there. We are still existing, and we are alive and kicking. So just feel free to contact us. Just contact me on LinkedIn. This is the easiest way to get to.
Okay. We'll have links to all of that in the show notes, everybody. Adrian, before we sign off, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, actually, I think we covered it.
Okay.
Just get to the point to be able to move. This is, I think, the best message I can give. And DevOps, CI/CD, agile thinking, those things should be implemented into your mindset, into your culture before you start to go to any endeavor in the software development today. Yeah.
I agree. You heard it from the man. Thanks for attending. Thanks for joining me today, Adrian. I hope to see you all next time on Tiny DevOps.
Thank you very much.